Good morning. Welcome back. So good to be here with you today. Today, we're going to be reading from the Sophia Dragons chapter in the Sophia Code, and I'm really looking forward to sharing this time with you and reflection with you. I want to thank everyone who joined us yesterday live, even though it was a bit of a tricky and complicated morning for me. It was really cool to be able to be there with you when we were able to finally go live. So thanks for joining us, and thank you for your beautiful comments in our video replay. I'm just going to be turning to the page that we're going to be working with today. And I'm still waking up. Had a very long work evening, so thanks for your patience. We're going to be reading from chapter 13 in the Sophia Code. And that is with the Sophia Dragons. Okay, yes, I would go ahead and turn to page 307. And we're going to read a couple paragraphs from the Sophia Code out loud together. I'm going to head over to the chat to see how y'all doing. Oh, good morning. Yes. Hi, everyone. It's so lovely to see your messages. Feel free to introduce yourself. Feel free to share where you're watching live from. Be sure to grab your copy of the Sophia Code because this is definitely a passage that is really relevant to this week and what we're experiencing this week worldwide. And I'm really happy that we're all gathered together. Feel free to go ahead and like this video if you're just joining us live. And Sophia wants to be a part of this, but she has to stay inside the office. So, okay, so as we prayed about yesterday, there's this massive conflict that has erupted, and it's got all of our attention on the media. And yesterday, I just wanted to gently remind everyone that to be curious, to instead of running to details or choosing sides, to consider that there's probably a lot of information that isn't being shared with the public about what's really going on. As I've shared in previous videos on this channel, people that we think are in power are not really the ones in power. There is an elite hierarchy that is nameless and faceless for most people in this world because they are orchestrating events so far beyond what we are given as a public theater or arena to understand the matrix that humanity is encapsulated in. And so, just as for the past 2 years, we've been rigorously programmed to believe in the level, all sorts of belief systems that they would have us believe about the past 2 years. The same thing is happening right now. And it's important to really fully embody your higher self's discernment at this time and to not allow yourself to be hooked in the spider web of programming, the hyper-sensationalism of, the ruling power's favorite subject, which is war and annihilation. How we can navigate the field is we can step into that compassionate witness within us and pray for everyone and pray for our future and pray for our planet. And to really focus on the future of peace that we will live one day on this planet, whether it's in this lifetime or in our future generations' lifetime. That's what we're working towards, an evolutionary arc of ascension towards liberation, enlightenment, and peace on this planet. And it's a resonance that has existed on this planet before, and it can exist on this planet again. It's why we decided to show up to our angelic mission. So am I saying that there isn't a war happening? Absolutely not. Of course there is. It's a war that Many people have predicted, not just over the past 5 to 10 years, but over, honestly, there's Hopi prophecies about a third world war. And yet there are so many awakened people on the planet right now. We have a powerful, and I mean powerful, influence over what timelines get chosen by choosing to focus on the reality that we are co-creating with our source, with our higher self, with the ascended masters, with the archangels. We don't have to give in to the narrative. We don't have to give in to the theater. If you dig hard enough, there's some pretty disturbing research as to why this invasion would be happening. And so, it's so much easier in dualism and polarity to start picking sides um, and choosing ideologies. But the reality is we are this matrix is struggling between, multiple forms of tyranny and multiple different government structures. And it's up to us to claim our individual sovereignty, to step fully into the truth of our sovereign divinity, which then is going to broadcast to the whole world that it's everybody's choice. It's up to each and every one of us to make that choice, which then unplugs us from this slave matrix. It unplugs us from the tyrannical behavior of these governments, and it steps us into a resonance that is extremely empowering, both for us individually and collectively. It opens up new options. It creates a clear space for heavenly downloads to take place on this planet within our body, hearts, and minds, that's going to move and shift us into a new paradigm, one loving step at a time. Now, is that going to happen overnight? No, but every day counts, every prayer counts, every step counts. And so this is the perspective that the Ascended Masters have been guiding us from the beginning. You have to understand an Ascended Master watches over humanity's evolution, in the case of Baba G, for honestly millions upon millions of years. Imagine the rise and fall of wars that he's seen. Imagine the endless patience he's had to practice with humanity as he watches humanity continue to remain addicted to a spiritual infancy. These ascended masters, they know the long game of evolutionary arcs for an entire species. And, humanity is doing its best to move from spiritual infancy, hopefully maybe to spiritual toddlerhood. And we all know what toddlers are like. They have a lot of temper tantrums. So that's why the call to spiritual maturity, the call to embody the truth of your sovereign divinity has never been more important. That's why I'm constantly speaking about the importance of spiritual leadership, and why leading with the Sophia Code is extremely important at this time. Every individual that consciously chooses to step into walking in their relationship with life through the perspective of their higher self, learning what it means on a cellular level to embody the truth of their sovereignty, to build a new life based on a completely new context, sovereign choices. This is what every individual is eventually going to find their way to, whether in this lifetime or another. But this particular lifetime, it's extremely important that those who are willing and ready to activate into the truth of their sovereign divinity, and most importantly, learn how to live from that truth, not just have the knowledge, but the embodied somatic wisdom, the full body, knowing system of how to live from that sovereign space. That is how we awaken an entire species. Even if 1% of the population chose to accept their sovereign divinity, the quantum wave effect of that would be so revolutionary. We would see massive changes worldwide. And this is why I believe so much in the Sophia Code, because the Sophia Code is a sacred text for activating humanity's sovereign divinity. And this is the time that the Sophia Code came to the planet specifically to address this level of, honestly, global addiction to a slavery system, global addiction to war and annihilation, an unconscious addiction to Luciferian agendas. attempting to annihilate the Christ consciousness within us, which, by the way, is impossible because Christ consciousness / Buddha consciousness is invincible. So because the light within us is so invincible, we have the ability to sustain and maintain a great deal of abuse, both individually and collectively. But just because you can take a good beating, does that mean you should? Heck no. It means that one day humanity needs to pick itself up off the ground and learn how to stand for what is sacred about itself, and everything about being human is sacred. So, there's that defining moment, right, in any storyline where someone's being bullied for a really long time, and they stand up and they learn how to fight for themselves or for their family. And we could say that's what's happening and what we're seeing visually on the media about this war. And if that inspires you, then great. But I'd rather us understand that it's not about what they're telling us this war is about on TV. What this is about is there is a war against humanity. There is a war that is seeking to annihilate humans worldwide. And we must stand up and fight for what is sacred, which is our hearts, our divinity, our human bodies, our civil liberties. And when I say fight, I'm not saying we fight back against anyone or anything. What I'm saying is we fight for ourselves. We choose to love ourselves in radical new ways. We choose to love one another in radical new ways. We choose to make life decisions and choices that are so unlike anything we've ever done that it is literally embodying taking a stand for what we believe in by turning away from our unconscious addiction to duality and turning directly into that unified field of our sovereign Christ light, that unified field of our sovereign Buddhic light that is directing us to birth a completely new paradigm beyond the duality, the polarity, the extreme nihilism of, the past couple of thousand years. And that takes extreme focus and willingness to not be hooked and manipulated by the narrative, by the warring fractions that would love for you to pick a side. It's like we can pray for everyone and everyone impacted by the traumas of war, including your own heart, by the way, because each and every one of us, wherever we stand in this world, we have been subjected to the horrific traumas of what these agendas of annihilation have been subjecting us to every day of our life. There isn't a single day that I walk around on this world where I'm not subjected to the neurotoxins of what's being dumped in our skies. There isn't a single day that I'm not aware of the injustices of this world and how many people are direly suffering and attempting to just eke a living out of this slave reality. Like, we are all witnessing incredible injustice and torture and ongoing agendas of destruction every day of our life. We are all surviving this war against humanity. What happens is when a war, such as what we're experiencing now, is declared and agreements that were holding the social fabric, the very vulnerable social fabric of a global community are being trespassed against. What this is doing is simply heightening our awareness to what's happening every single day. Every single day, sovereign nations are being invaded and used and manipulated by other nations that are strong enough and have enough power to do that. Everyday cultures are being wiped out. This is nothing new. But because the media Zoom puts a very high resolution zoom lens on what they want you to focus on what they want you to be freaked out about. It's like we're creatures of habit. We know we are designed to hyper focus on anything that the mind can be attracted to. And so it's really, really important to understand when you are praying for solutions, when you are meditating upon what is unfolding, you don't have to have all the answers about the geopolitical landscape that is a literal, like, Luciferian hot mess there's so much that you'll never actually see or hear about what's really going on behind the scenes, or what's really motivating the public leaders that are being maneuvered by those behind them. What we need to pray for is for an awakening of humanity worldwide. What we need to pray for is for those who are suffering to receive the relief and the miracles that they need in every country across the world. We are one species, we are one family, and I deeply honor the national identities of every nation that we all come from, but it's not where our identity begins and ends. Our identity begins and ends through the source of our sovereign divinity. We are sovereign divine beings having a human experience on a planet that we call Earth, and that is where our loyalty should lie. Is in loving one another and praying for one another beyond the narrative that would keep us blaming one another, being victimized by one another. We have to choose our minds first to step into a sovereign context, a compassionate witness, understanding that this is just yet one more example of how these powers are continue to manipulate the global narrative about what we're surviving. But fortunately, many people after the past 2 years have woken up in a profound way. They've eaten a lot of red pills on YouTube in the middle of the night, and they know that there is something going on underneath the surface of what most people perceive to be reality, which much of that is a false matrix. And they're waking up to understand that there's something really, really, really dark behind all of this. And that's challenging for most people to face, because they think they have to, number one, face it alone. And number two, they have to confront the fact that evil does exist. And it does. It does. There's a purpose to it. And we don't have to understand why it exists or what its purpose is to know our purpose. You don't have to figure it all out. That's where most light workers start to go a little crazy and feel so frustrated or depressed or overwhelmed, because they think they have to have all the answers. You don't have to have all the answers. You have the answer within you that will always be the answer, no matter what planet you incarnate into, no matter what human or non-human species you decide to experience in the world's form. The answer is the truth of your sovereign divinity, is an invincible light beyond all planetary matrices, beyond all rules, beyond all global warring factions of consciousness that are vying for our attention. We honor masters such as Mother Mary, Jesus, Buddha, Green Tara, Isis. We honor these ones because they came into the planetary matrix, and they were not distracted by everything that would keep them divided within themselves. These are masters of light that became such a unified field of divine consciousness that they changed the course of history forever. Their unified field influenced millions of lives and continues to influence billions of souls throughout the centuries because of their example. And this is the example that we are being called into. And when we witness something like what we are witnessing with this war, it's a call to action. It's sobering. It wakes us up to why we're here. It helps us wake up out of the lethargy, the ego structures demands upon us that say we're not good enough to lead or to fulfill our divine purpose, or we'll never accomplish our spiritual destiny. And it's like, that's just all crap. And when we are facing the possibility of a third world war, which may or may not happen, it's like that quickens the spirit. It wakes you up out of the sleep of kind of letting things go another day, and it brings our feet to the fire of like, am I deeply in my spiritual practice? What is the most important thing for me to be focusing upon? It's always your direct connection to source, your direct connection to God, your embodiment of your higher self, resourcing the strength of your spiritual guides and angelic guardians that are guiding you in all circumstances, both in war and in peace, for you to be able to thrive in all circumstances, for you to be able to intuitively navigate from your gut and your heart and a clear mind to make decisions that make sense for you, regardless of all circumstances. And That is learning how to, what we call in the Sophia Code Mystery School, how to embody your higher self. And these are times where living from your intuition, having a clear connection to your source, embodying your higher self, they're no longer a luxury. It's not something that we talk about because it's cool, or it's something like really, popular to talk about on Instagram. We've been talking about this forever, and we're going to keep talking about this because this is the authentic journey of spirituality. It's learning how to navigate life in really difficult times, and also learning how to use that navigation system to create beauty in all experiences and in all times, both pleasurable and painful. That there is an opportunity for us to give back to life, to create life the way that the divine created us to give birth to life. So thanks for allowing me to share a little bit about that. How y'all doing in the comment field? I'm just gonna head over here. I'm really glad to see everyone's comments coming in. So good to see everyone. Someone's asking, we've gotten this question before, Penanetta is asking, Yuli is asking, why is Buddha not in the Ascended Master Circle? You can absolutely invoke the Buddha in the Ascended Master Circle. Green Tara is the mother of all Buddhas. So we've kind of got it covered when we are invoking Green Tara being the mother of literally every Buddha that's ever existed in the Buddhist cosmology, including the Dakinis, who are divine feminine Buddhas. And if it empowers you to invoke Lord Buddha or whichever Buddha you're working with, because there are many, feel free to invite them in the southeast corner of your circle of life. It's that is very extremely welcome. And just in reflection, in my own personal journey, it wasn't until quite recently, over the past 2 years, that I really started consciously working with the masculine Lord Buddha. My practice is actually with the medicine Buddha. And that was because my higher self was guiding me to focus primarily on the divine feminism of Buddhism, which needed to be deeply reconciled. There's a belief that women cannot become enlightened until they have incarnated into a male form. So there was some serious healing that the Sophia Code as a lineage was taking on by reconciling with the fact that actually the mother of all Buddhism comes from a mother. So from the divine feminine. So we are, as a soft movement, we begin from the divine feminine perspective, which then heals our relationship with the divine masculine. So that's a little bit about that. I'm going to read some of these other comments. EM is writing in, agreed. We're creating a new paradigm, not fixing the old. Absolutely. Let's see, Jen is writing in, I hope to share some experiences I've had with these dark agendas trying to take out humanity. 2021 was so pivotal for Jen in this space. This is a real thing, and my sovereignty was one. I'm so happy for you, Jen, that those heightened contrasts brought you face to face with the truth of your sovereign divinity. Yes, Joan is definitely one of the closest masters that we work with. Recently has in many ways ascended through the sainthood. Let's see. Great. Cool. So, all right. So let's take a moment. If you're just joining us live, yeah, cultivating our discernment. Love that. Thanks so much for these comments coming in. They're just kind of all in every direction. So I'm just going to head over to our reading for today, which I'm excited about. And again, we're reading from the Sophia Code on page 307 in honor of really getting our perspective about what is unfolding here from the perspective of the angelic orders, from the perspective of the ascended masters. So at the bottom of page 307 in the Sophia Code, this is the words of the Sophia Dragons that are sharing with us their perspective about our evolution with war. And the Sophia Dragons say, humanity's paradigm of duality has created a monstrous magnitude of suffering and global crisis due to the reactive behavior of victimhood. Believing that you can elicit solutions by focusing upon the suffering only shreds the sensitivity of your heart and overrides your self-confidence, crippling your ability to affect change. That is a massive 2 sentences. So what are they saying here? We are addicted to duality, okay? Out of that addiction, it creates a monstrous, a larger than life addiction to suffering and global crisis to keep us in the reactive behavior of victimhood. So we have to look at what is the war within us that is keeping us addicted to victimhood in any area of our life. We want war to end worldwide. We have to take the time to end the wars within ourselves through a very powerful self-love practice, by identifying the truth of our sovereign divinity and taking action upon what is it really going to take to learn how to live from the perspective of that light, how to allow that light to overtake every part of our humanity that is addicted to the duality, and to up level and upgrade our systems to live through the context of sovereignty. And they go on, that next sentence, believing that you can elicit solutions by focusing upon suffering only shreds the sensitivity of your heart. So when we focus on endless footage about war, not to say to stick your head in the sand, but if you allow yourself to get overly emotionally involved with the footage that you're seeing, instead of stepping into the compassionate witness, it's going to shred your heart, because you're going to feel helpless, as though you can do nothing. And that's what this propaganda machine wants you to do. They want to attack. They want you to watch attacks happening. They want you to watch this violence so that you will feel emotionally disempowered, stagnated, and frozen in place. So this constant feeding of this footage is designed to traumatize you by default, because they're not really looking for solutions. They're looking to keep us in a state of panic and fear. So it's up to each and every one of us to watch media mindfully with discernment, and to pray through the compassionate witness, where you are not allowing your body to be taken over by the trauma that's spewing out of screens everywhere you look. And if you happen to allow it to come in at that level, as to like what can happen, it's like it's overriding your self-confidence and crippling your ability to affect change. What the Sophia Dragons are saying is like, you can take in a certain level of information and know where to pray and meditate on solutions and to be the solution within your own life without inundating yourself, without crippling yourself. It's important for you to understand that. You're going to know exactly what you need to know wherever you're standing in the world, because your higher self is going to make sure you have that information without inundating yourself with propaganda. We're going to keep reading here. And the Sophia Dragons want to say, we assure you that healing these global crises requires the level-headed ingenuity of your higher self's creativity pouring through you in communion with other like-minded light workers. Right, the Sophia Dragons aren't just telling us to be careful. They're saying the solution does exist within you. And when you take care of your heart, when you take responsibility for what you're ingesting, about what the propaganda machine would have you believe reality is, or have you believe what this matrix is, when you choose to decide through your own intuition what reality is for you through the perspective of God, through the perspective of your higher self and your guides, you come back into that centered, empowered place that can help you access the creative solutions about what is yours to do today. Who are the people here for you to love today? Who are the people that are here to serve today through your divine purpose? And that service and that love contributes to the overall well-being of humanity's consciousness. I promise you, when I tune into how many times these dark agendas are trying to topple and annihilate this world, and then I tune into the level of well-being, the level of wholeness, the collective prayer for goodness and peace and abundance in this world, it's absolutely amazing to feel just how strong, it's like a force field of goodness that light workers around the world are contributing to every day, and you're a part of that. And that's what the Sophia Dragons are saying. They're saying, focus on what you are creating. Focus on what you want to focus upon. what you want to have more of in this world. And that does make a significant difference. The Sophia Dragons go on to say at the bottom of page 307, your endless wars will never be won on the age-old battlegrounds of duality. You know, it's been so interesting for me to watch some of the footage about what's unfolding between Russia and Ukraine, because, and really it's between far more influences than these two titles, because it really is an age-old battleground. Like, who even fights wars with tanks anymore? It doesn't even make sense. Like the level of laser technology, like the level of, there's so many ways to destroy a nation that don't involve rolling tanks into a country. This is all, like, ironically, as horrific as it is, it's theater. It's not actually necessary to take over a country with that kind of artillery. The weaponry on this planet has advanced so far beyond that. Do you understand that they're using this horror as a part of a way to manipulate our hearts? And it plays so beautifully. You know, this sentence speaks so beautifully to that manipulation. Your endless wars will never be won on the age-old battlegrounds of duality. When I look at that footage, I'm watching the past being replayed, like literally before our eyes. And that media coverage is saying, are you going to step back into the past with us? Don't be in the present moment. Come back here with us so that we can again manipulate a global narrative. The Sophia Dragons go on to say, your dark ages of rape, genocide, and greed will not be healed by more centuries of victimhood. Blaming your governments will not stop the devastating pollution of your planet. The slavery of human trafficking will not end in your corrupt court systems. Famine will continue to thrive in the dualistic thinking that perpetuates another starving outside of your personal reality. Boom. I mean, first of all, if we really want to understand what all of these agendas are masking, so much planet-wide human trafficking, not just on this planet, but off-grid. There are so many programs that are running that most of society has no concept of. To create this level of a distraction, imagine the depth of how much is really happening that they're trying to hide from you. Take a moment to consider that. But the Sophia Dragons go on to say, look, thinking you can rail against the old system is exactly what they want you to do. And it's just keeping us in our will. So what is the solution? They go on at the top of page 308 to say, the Sophia Dragons say, no matter how these issues may enrage, confound, or sadden you, your feelings, isn't this interesting? The feelings can be gathered as a great momentum that bypasses the minefields of duality, skyrockets you beyond this duality, and you can harness the passion of what you feel as fuel for a spiritual revolution that will require a great stamina. Sophia Dragons are not minimizing the depth of what is required. They're saying it's going to require great stamina for the steadfast embodiment of your Sophia Christ light. This is your lifetime to lead as a beacon of attunement for others. You are one of the innumerable light workers from across the universe incarnating on earth at this time to birth a spiritual revolution of Sophia Christ consciousness, including the return of the divine feminine Christ, which activates the sovereignty of humanity. This spiritual revolution does not require that you fight against anyone or anything. This is a revolution of your own divinity, commanding miracles to dissolve all obstacles that are in your way. Resourcing your divinity to immaculate birth, a new world paradigm, is the most revolutionary act that you can commit. The answer is still the same. After thousands of years of masters that have come and spoken and lived on this planet and ascended and have continued to guide us to the same answer, the answer is within us. It is the truth of our sovereign divinity. And if humanity gets finally fed up enough with being so bullied simply for being divine, I think what we're witnessing now is a global awakening that there has to be a solution beyond what we've attempted for the past 100,000 years, hundreds and thousands of years. It's just like, how many times are we going to play this same script over and over again? It's time for us to wake up. And it's time for humanity to wake up to the truth of its sovereign divinity and to explore what it means to be limitless divinity in human form. Limitless divinity in human form doesn't need wars to evolve. Limitless divinity in human form does have the sovereign free will option to evolve through divine love, through creativity, through abundance, through caring for one another, healing our past with our presence, fully focused in the present moment on what is here to love, what is here to empower, and what's here guiding us from within. I hope that this reading from the Sophia Dragons chapter in the Sophia Code was helpful for you today. I hope my prayer is that bringing our consciousness back into realignment with the center of our soul and the soul of humanity and the center of our true power, which is the source, God, whatever you call that. In particular, the divine feminine principles of the source that guide our intuitive knowledge, our discernment, and help us step into right action right now, right here and now amidst these crises, and to guide us to what we can create beyond these crises as solutions that contribute to the wholeness of humanity's unified field of consciousness. Thank you so much for joining me for today's KR Daily Transmission. Feel free to leave your feedback in the video replay if you're watching the replay. Thanks for everyone joining us live in the chat, and we'll see you all again here tomorrow for our KR Daily Transmission. And we have our YouTube live consecutive French translation. We're going to be walking through chapter 12 of the Sophia Code as a community at 11 a.m. Pacific. All my love to you. Namaste.